Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Restituto, and I'm a musician from Northport, New York. And today we have the absolute honor of having Ben Hausdorff here on the channel. Ben, thank you so much for taking the time. Ben is a freelance videographer working with plenty of names that you guys recognize here on the channel, and I'm really looking forward to having you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks for reaching out.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to our chat. So, for people that are not familiar with the work that you've done, can you give a little bit of backstory on who you are and what you've done? And then after that, I want to kind of go back into the beginning years of your career and your journey as an artist.
Cool. Yeah. Well, for the most part, I am, like you said, a freelance videographer. I do a lot of things, mostly behind the scenes work now. I work with RCA Records, Warner Records, so most notably Pentatonix, touring with them, doing their behind the scenes. But I started doing like freelance work of all sorts, weddings, events, and then that kind of led into some behind the scenes, miscellaneous things all over. Recently, I just did Sweetie and Her behind the scenes for Warner, which that song drops in a few days. So it's been kind of the majority of my editing this past week. And I'm working to be a film director. So I've made a feature film, short film, writing a bunch. That's kind of the general extent of it at the moment. Yeah.
I love that, man. I love that like you're in that middle part of your journey where it's like you've had a good amount of success. You started off, you've had a good amount of success, and then you still have these really cool goals that you're reaching for. So it's this cool dichotomy of like where you want to be, but also recognizing where you came from.
Yeah,
Side note: I noticed that you went to Ithaca College. Are you from New York?
I am originally Rochester, New York.
Ah, very cool. I'm a Long Island boy,
Nice, man.
born and
Yeah. Yeah.
raised. Born and raised.
I lived there for 8 years and then I moved around a lot as a kid. So, but Rochester's always been the home base. And so I went back to Ithaca kind of to reestablish my roots a little bit.
Yeah, very cool. So many kids, especially the music kids in my school, went to Ithaca. It was a big
Mhm.
music school for my class. So I would love to hear a little bit of your backstory, like your origin story, essentially of you know, how did you get into your career and how did you discover, this is something I wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny because it starts back when I was in high school I went to international school in Brussels in Belgium. And we would just, there was like some classes where you would make videos. And so that was always really fun for me, but I always thought it was just kind of fun. So when I went to Ithaca, I studied athletic training for 2 days, 3 days. And I took a physics class or anatomy class. And I was like, man, I do not want to do this at all. This is ridiculous. A neighbor of mine in the dorm was a film student. And so he was like, and I was helping him with one of his projects. I kind of acted in it. And he was like, it was just so much fun. And I was like, I could do this as a major. And so that's when I got into cinema and photography, concentrated in cinema production, realized this is my calling. I mean, they train you to be like a director and learn how to work on set and stuff. So with all that being said, I immediately moved to LA after college. My parents still lived in Belgium, so I wasn't going to be able to really go back and work there, like a lot of kids do. They go home and work. So I moved to LA. I started at a independent startup production company for a guy who had made a feature film. He kind of sold his whole life, made a feature film, and was in the process of post-production. So I learned what I didn't want to do,
Hmm.
which was being in the office, producing, coordinating, things like that. I really wanted to be on set. I really wanted to hold the camera. I mean, I really wanted to direct, but directing seems just so hard. When you first start out, it's like there's a handful of directors that are really
Hmm.
working. So I knew I could do something with the camera. So I actually quit that job and started working at a restaurant. And in that process, two things happened. One, a buddy of mine from college was he was a documentary studies major. His name is Brad Patoka, a good friend of mine. He wanted to come out and visit, but he wanted to make a project. And so him and he hits me up and goes, I heard there's the Salton Sea out in California, which is like the largest man-made lake in California. It's like evaporating. And I didn't even know what that was. So long story short, we go down to the Salton Sea, which is like 2 hours from here. And we realize there's like this crazy issue going on with the sea shrinking and all the chemicals getting into the air and the pollution and everything. So we, on the fly, make a documentary. That inspires me when I get back to my job at Crave Cafe. There's a professional Muay Thai fighter who was working with me. And I was like, dude, can I just make something with you for free? Like, let's do it. So I followed him for a month training and went to a fight of his. I made this video that this is like one of the first videos I made out of college and like, you know, by myself. And I realized like, damn, this is pretty good. Like I actually like really enjoy this. And I think I've got something here. So that led me to pursue a videography career. There's a lot more work in videography than film. And so a friend of mine from college, she was a intern at RCA. And so I reached out to her and was like, hey, you know, anything at all, can I just get in the music industry? That'd be cool. She put me in touch with someone. It took a full year before anything at all manifested with that. And it was very small things. It was like a club event for Tinashe, like go film her featured song. So while that was going on, I was finding other event work, videography work. I was taking photos for a frat party company. I mean, it's crazy to think back, like all of the different things I've done. You know, worked for an event filming company that did weddings, and I filmed a funeral once, you know, like, I mean, the spectrum was crazy. Anyway, finally, something happens with RCA. It was small, but they like what I do, and they kept hitting me up to like very randomly too. I probably did like 2 or 3 things in the first year, then maybe 3 or 4 in the second, small to large. But most notably what happened was in 2018, I did a behind the scenes video for Frankie featuring Scott Hoying, and the song was called Ghost. So I do that video, good rapport on set, nothing crazy, you know, like both artists were really nice, made a good video. Started doing a few other things in that month. Things got busy. And then I got reached out to by Pentatonix's management. And they were like, hey, you know, we got your info from someone at RCA and we're interested in having a tour videographer. Are you interested? I was put into the running. I think Scott was able to be like, oh, I worked with him. That's cool. And from there, I went on tour with them in the summer of 2018. And then with Pentatonix, kind of the rest is history. And because I was doing all these other things for RCA and then Warner, I've been doing more behind the scenes over and over and over again. So
incredible story. I want to start off with a compliment. And I've heard a lot of different stories here on the channel. I've done a lot of these interviews, and yours is one that the way you tell it, and also just the facts of it. It's very it keeps you interested the whole time. Like, oh, that happened next, and then that happened next, and oh wow. So I want to compliment you on that. Your storytelling ability is fantastic, which as a videographer is probably the most important aspect of any video, is the storytelling that you tell in the video. But it definitely comes across in your speaking ability as well. So many different things I related to, and I just want to touch on really quickly in that, man. First of all, I love the fact that you said you were it had that other major for about 2 days. I relate to that tremendously. I thought I wanted to be an architect. Took, I think it was 1 or 2 days of this class. I was like, this is crazy. No way. Dropped out of that and then started with music. And I was like, oh, I love this. So it's so funny that you say that. And then I love the fact that you also mentioned, you know, you started working with RCA, but so many people, like people that would have just left at the fact of, oh yeah, they hit me up a couple times. I like that you mentioned, and this is I think a key for anybody listening after the fact, it was very happenstance. It was 1, 2, 3 times this first year, 2, 3 times this second year. Like if you just said, oh, they hit me up a couple times, like people are like, oh, you know, he had 17 gigs the first year. Like it takes a while to build these careers, man, and get the connections and meet the people. And I think that myself included, starting off, I thought I was going to be playing Madison Square Garden 3 years. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it was actually really frustrating at first because I got the connection. She put me in touch, and they almost immediately were like, hey, Chip the Rip has a music video we'd love to do behind the scenes for. I was like, awesome. And then it fell through because they have, as it usually does, the artist has someone they do their behind the scenes for. And that kind of then, after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to get hit up a lot more. And I didn't. And I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do in the meantime? That's where all those weird events and things started coming in. I was working at restaurants to supplement income as well. What I didn't mention in there was all the other passion things that I do, because I am trying to be a director and I'm working to be a director. So in 2016, I produced a feature film that a buddy of mine had written, you know, and was like, hey man, I got the money. I was like, $100,000. He's like 10, but let's do it. And so we produced a feature film, and we made it, in August 2016. And I spent 2 years editing that, all the while
Wow.
doing weird gigs. Yeah, because it's all in the free time, right before the pandemic, I actually produced and directed a short film that I had written in college. That was going to be my thesis, and these are all then editing. Luckily, don't want to say luckily, but the pandemic hit and it gave me time to edit. I had nothing else but to edit that. So that was in the festival circuit the last year. But those things, I mean, I'm still not like a director by, working standards like that. And that's what I moved here to do. They definitely take a lot of time. So patience.
Oh, that is the biggest thing. It's patience and enjoying the journey, because otherwise, you get depressed and you're like, screw it, I'm not here where I want to be. But it's like, what, I'm one day closer. I can tell you that, right? One day closer to that goal, and I've met a lot of cool people along the way. So another little aspect that I'm just kind of really excited that you mentioned is the fact of like, I've been so curious and I've been trying to figure out forever what the difference between a producer and a director was. And the fact that you mentioned the producer's more on like inside the offices and inside, doing all the like the paperwork stuff, and the director's actually in the actual filming. Is that correct?
Yeah, some producers are more hands-on. Some producers, they're definitely on set. They're definitely part of some of the creative process, but a lot of the producer role is pulling all the pieces together, making sure that everything happens, that it's within the budget, that we get the director, we get the cinematographers, we get locations, and they delegate depending on the size. While the director is so much more of like the vision and like the captain of the crew, I like to say, because everyone's looking to them when you're on set. But behind the scenes, before set happens, it's really about like the creative nature, how the film is going to look and sound. While the producer's kind of making sure that that director's vision, again, sometimes they have a lot of input as well, but that director's vision, can even happen.
Yes, that is really interesting. I've always been super, super curious about the difference between the two of them. So thank you for explaining that. Really also a key point that I think some people could really benefit from is the fact of, you said you learned what you didn't want to do, but the only way that you learned what you didn't want to do is by actually doing it. And it's I think a key in the creative industry is just try things. Try, being so I would have never ever thought that YouTube would be my career. I'm a musician, right? I make music, man. I put out 100 songs, right? That's my end goal, is to play these shows and stuff. But like, had I not started with YouTube, like, that's what's paying my bills right now. Like, but like, I would have never thought that. So just people, I think, need to like try things. But then there's been plenty of other things that I don't like doing. I don't love going out and covering songs at a bar. Like, even though there's decent money there, like you could make a good living, it's like I just don't like it. So, but I learned that by doing 200 gigs at a bar. It's like you just learn what you like do and don't like, and what you're good at and what you're not good at.
Yeah, definitely. There's someone actually recently told me that there's three kinds of gigs. There's gigs that you do mainly just for the money, you do for the passion, and you do for the career. And the best kind of gigs are ones that you do that hit two of those categories. Because if you just do it for the money, you're going to be miserable and it might not even do anything for your career. You just do it for the passion, you might not make any money, you might lose money, and, it might not benefit your career. And if you just do it for the career, you might not be making any money. You know what I mean? And so When he said that, it was really interesting, because when you're starting out, you kind of have to just do things for money, or you kind of just have to do things for your career. But as you get older and you start finding what you like and what you don't like, there's a way to hit that balance, if you will, where you're constantly building, but at the same time in different aspects. So you're not miserable because you feel like you're selling out, or you're never doing your passion because it is helping with your career. That's kind of where I'm trying to focus on now. But let me tell you, at the beginning, it was a lot of just about money, especially living out in LA.
Dude, I took some of the weirdest jobs too, man. And that's partly how I started with YouTube, is I, as a musician, needed to film music videos, but I couldn't afford to film music videos. So I filmed them myself, and people were like, hey, you're actually pretty good at videography. So I also filmed the wedding. Well, I filmed wedding, yes, but I also filmed the funeral as well.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting dynamic.
It's weird, man. It was my only funeral.
Yes, mine too.
I was
Very
like,
odd
okay, please don't
dynamic.
put me on any more of these. Yeah.
Oh man, that's so funny. I would love to transition a little bit into some of your tour life because I think that that is a super interesting aspect of being an artist. That isn't talked about as much, and I just think people are super curious about it. And most people don't know how grueling it actually can be, or how great it can be, depending on how you do it. So I would just love to hear some of your experiences, and maybe we can go into some tips that you have for people that are potentially going to go on tour one day.
Yeah, I mean, the first tour we did was incredibly overwhelming. I had a friend who was an assistant. The management was like, "Do you need two people?" I was like, "I mean, based on the amount of work they're asking, I guess so." And even that was like, it was my first tour, and I didn't really know. I've been editing for years, but the amount of work you're getting, the amount of footage you're getting every
Mm,
day, and the time constraints. I mean, we were doing for the 2018 summer tour, it was a weekly YouTube video, anywhere from like 5 to 15 minutes, which consisted of usually like four show days, on top of daily Instagram videos that would be
mm,
recap shows. And I was taking photos during the shows. So that felt like a lot of work. And I was kind of pushing my assistant to be logging the footage and doing everything. After that tour, things kind of settled down a little bit. And you realize, like, especially for people who are starting to go on tour, like just breathe, find
mm,
a system that works for you because it was getting stressful. It was like that the work was not fun. And
mm.
balancing with the tour where, I was lucky enough to be with a group that's awesome and all are very friendly and we became friends. And so you want to hang out while also filming. And then, that leads to longer days and times of like, man, I don't really want to edit right now because,
Mm,
even if I'm going to go film, the band is doing something
yeah.
and you have to find that balance.
Mm,
So work wise, it's a lot, but it's really fun. I mean, tour is really fun. It's like a summer camp, a traveling summer camp where you get experiences. If you have great artists and great people, like it makes it so much better.
hmm.
Um, it's definitely a lot of work though, so that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Follow up question to the first thing you mentioned with working with RCA. You're essentially a freelance artist for RCA. Essentially, they hire you, like, the subcontract you for these gigs.
Yeah.
Or okay, so it doesn't. It's not like they sign you as a videographer. They just sign you as a
Wow.
freelance. Yeah,
Wow.
that's interesting. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool, actually.
Yeah.
Huh.
It works out because it allows me to do all the other passionate
Yeah.
things I'm passionate about, as well as other gigs,
Yeah, that's
other
really
companies,
that's a cool
other
gig.
bands and stuff. Yeah.
That's a cool gig. So I'm curious, as somebody that tries to do a daily vlog, I would love to like pick your brain on on your process of what to film in the sense of, how do you decide what clips you're like? Because like a big portion of I mean, you probably figured this out from when you're doing weddings and stuff. Is like you obviously you don't film the whole thing because then you have 15 hours of content, and you can't comb through all that. So how do you decide? Okay, I know I need to film this. I don't need to film this kind of thing.
Um, for behind the scenes stuff, it often is filming most of it because the moment you miss something is the moment that it should be in the video. Now, there's times where like you can gauge uh, what's going on or the attitude,
Mm,
if the band's not in a great mood or if like if you're on set and the directors, people are like, it's just bad energy. Usually you're not going to get very good footage.
mm-hmm.
You're not going to get any smiles. You're not going to get any uh, improv or people being silly on camera, which is always great. Um, but I think that question goes more towards, filming, yes, but even editing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what are you really using? What are you going to use? And that always goes to the story and what you're trying to tell. Is it the story of the day? Is it the story of the shoot? And kind of knowing that ahead of time. This is true when I shoot too, like how I generally want a video to be structured or what
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of thinking about really dictates what I'm going to film and how much I'm going to film. I've always found that when I try to film a certain amount, I end up shooting too little.
Mm.
So, it's like, oh, I thought I got enough B-roll, but then when you're in the editing room, you
Yeah.
realize I kind of fill this moment or that interview kind of sucked. And now, I need more music and I need more content to it. Or just in more smiles, people having a good time, even if the set sucked, there's you got to capture those moments. But I always try and think about what I'm trying to say with the video, even when I'm on set. Like when I was doing the Sweetie and Her music video, it was very much like get on set and like, whoa, there's all these sets like builds around. Okay, I kind of want to focus on that because they were building like 5 different sets, which is really cool. And that's obviously going to be a big piece of this video. So now I got to think about maybe the interviews I get, shaping that a little bit, maybe interviewing the production designer, which I ultimately did. But telling the story is kind of how it all comes full circle there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I think that the vlog idea is a really, really cool idea. I love, first of all, making them, but I also love watching them because you kind of get, as an artist, you get insight into your favorite artist, but also like things you can learn. Like, oh, that's how they get that shot, or that's how they do this, or that's the lighting that they use, right? I see it from a technical aspect, but even if you're just a fan of the group, you can, watch, or the artist, you can see, oh, that's so cool. You get to learn their personalities more. But I think as an up-and-coming artist, any artists that watch this after the fact, I think it's a really cool way to develop a connection to your supporters, because they get to see you for who you are, not just this make-up, perfect person in the music video or in, on the songs. They get to see the real person. So it's interesting when you do like, a specific day, like you specifically go into a behind the scenes of a shoot. But I'm curious if you have, for people that were to do a daily vlog, like I think a lot of artists should, or something, or a weekly vlog, how do you tell that story where it's just relatively the mundane as opposed to, a specific event of going to like a New York City party or going to shooting a music video or something like, or on tour?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of daily vlogs with Pentatonix on tour, and some days are much more interesting than others. So sometimes you just got to cut it down, just like not try and put everything in it, and say, okay, I did get the content, but maybe this day is a minute and a half long and not 4 minutes or something. But, otherwise there's a lot of different strategies to move things along. There's montages, where you put stuff with music and get your more shots. And maybe I don't have dialogue that's kind of mundane, maybe I find ways to make the camera moves more interesting. It depends obviously what kind of vlog you're talking about, but if you're, oh, you know what, I don't really have much today, but I wanted to kind of talk about my day. Maybe you try something new with the camera. Maybe you try something new with the transitions. It's not too far out of what you've been doing. But, I think just trying to stay creative, even with the most mundane things, because ultimately and honestly, and knowing when to just cut things out and just say, maybe this is kind of a boring day, and so we'll make it more quicker, snappier with some music, and then focus on the next time being more interesting or doing something out of your daily routine that spices up the video a little bit.
Yeah, it's super interesting, man. Absolutely. You mentioned logging the footage for your assistant. I'm curious from the process of that, if you don't mind chatting about that, because I think that is a really interesting thing. Especially, I'm a big fan of Gary Vee. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but the way that they archive some of his footage, where it's like how did they find that clip from 6 years ago about him talking about this? I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I have so much footage of all this stuff. Like, I don't know if I could ever go find that video again. And I don't not title anything. So, I mean, like the individual things. So I'm super curious on that.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine Gary Vee is like a savant of his own, like what he says, you know what I mean? He's probably like 4 years ago, I said this at this exact moment. But I think when you're dealing with a lot of footage, it's really like so much about organization for one. So starting with like, a folder within a folder within a folder, whether it's the date or the shoot, and then A camera or B camera, and then, making sure that in your camera it has the right date and time. I've had that happen a lot where I'm like, oh, I need to find something. And I remember it was this part of the day and my camera settings are off, and I'm like, all right, I gotta scrub through it all. What I learned a couple of years ago, I edit in Premiere. I think all editing software probably has this feature, but is labeling colors helps me dramatically. So what I'll do is I'll pull the footage in, I'll put it in whatever folders that need to be, and make it look nice and clean, and I like to organize stuff. And then, for sure. I put it in a timeline, all of it in chronological order, called a string out. And what I'll do is I'll go through the string out. I'll usually scrub through it unless there's dialogue, then you got to listen. But I'll scrub through it and I'll say, okay, the band, like for example, on tour, this is what I do. Like the band just being the band, they're talking to each other, they're, messing around, whatever. I'll label with the number one, and that's like the violet color or something, right? And then I'll go through and then be like, oh, this is just crew B-roll. That's number two, and that's the magenta color or whatever. And I'll go through with that. I'll put a little like sticky, or I'll have on the computer, I'll have like a notebook and writing out those things. So then as I'm doing that, I'll put little marks, like press M for marker, at least in Premiere.
Yeah.
At parts that are good, whether it's a good shot, someone's smiling, a good piece of dialogue, something being funny, anything that I might want to come back to. So in this string out now, it's nice and colorful with a lot of different little marks all over the place. The clip, then I'll copy that sequence. I've actually been thinking about talking about this, so it's funny you ask.
Oh, perfect. Look at this.
Yeah, I'll copy that sequence. I'll make a new sequence. I'll delete all the files in the sequence, not in the footage, but in the sequence that doesn't have a mark. And I'll put them all together. So now I've got a string out and a best string out. The string out's all the footage. The best string out is strictly things that are good or have good moments in them. And they're color coded. So I know when I look at it, be like, okay, there's some of the performance, there's some of an interview, there's this. And that's how I'll generally start logging. But just so everyone knows too, you don't edit off of those. You got to make copies of them, because the moment you go, oh, I've got my best string out, and then start cutting it up, if you have to go back or find things or delete things, you don't have another version. So just take those two string outs, put them off to the side, copy them, and then you can edit and take those apart. That's how I usually go through it.
I love that, man. There's some good nuggets in there for any video editors that are watching this. No, it's so true, man. I love that. That is cool. And I'm definitely going to steal some ideas from that. Please. I would love to know your opinion on where media is going, like in this new age of media with the shorter form content, like the TikToks, Reels, and Shorts. Do you have any? I mean, I'm going to ask some specific questions and stuff, but do you have a general thought on it? Do you like it? Do you not like it?
I have mixed feelings about it. I think I'm not really on TikTok. And I tried at one point, and everyone's like, you should be, and it's really good for social. And it is, 100%. I edit for a living, I'm trying to be off my phone as it is a little bit. And then editing on your phone when I do it on a computer, and it's just like a lot of work that is definitely worthwhile. Don't get me wrong. But for me, those kind of short form videos, I'm just not as inspired by. I've always been someone who loves like sketch comedy and stuff that take 3 to 4 minutes, or 2 to 4 minutes to produce, and more of a YouTube medium. But it's interesting too, because like Quibi, right? Like you think about Quibi, it's like someone tried to take the idea of short form content, but make it really like, well produced and beautiful, and use real cameras to do it. And the company folded, because that's not really the interest. A lot of the really popular TikToks are very shaky iPhone footage, or just funny things with text over them, or more like viral videos. So I have mixed feelings about it. I think there's a lot of really good stuff about short form video, but it's also kind of fuels our like shorter attention span. It's not great for the music industry, like it is in terms of people get noticed, but it isn't, because then artists aren't recognized for being the artist. It's more for like a snippet of the song. And I can imagine that's very frustrating as an artist. Mixed feelings.
Yeah, man, I very much understand that. Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic, and I very much relate to those exact feelings, because it's like, I do a lot of video editing myself, definitely not to the capacity that you do, but like it's so hard once you've built something to some degree to, take like, even if you take a half an hour, 15 minutes, like to then edit something that's 15 seconds long, when that half an hour can go to something that's not 15 seconds long. It's a very interesting dynamic, and then it's so user first. Like if it's not a good, it really actually, it's hard as a creator, but it's really good for the creator to some degree, in the sense of like, if it's not good video, it doesn't do well. So as a creator, you're like, why do I want to make a video if it's not going to do well? But then that will also make you a better creator, because you'll have to figure out what does well, right? So it's a pro and con to both, but I have a very love-hate relationship with it.
No, I feel that. And I mean, that's a good way to put it, unless what does well is things that you're not really inspired by, or
A
things that
hundred
you're like,
percent.
oh, I made this really great video that I love and it's not doing well, but this video that I zoomed in on a dog over there blew up. And now when I'm, it's like, I mean, that's also maybe an algorithm thing. But
Yeah. You literally described my TikTok because one of my first TikToks was my dog locking me out of the house. Got like 800,000 views or something like that. And that's where I got all these followers from. And now when I post something about music, people don't care because they want to see the dog
yeah,
that locked me out of the house.
like there's not more dog videos. What is this? What is this TikTok? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Catch 22, I guess.
It is a catch 22. It's so true, man. I would love to, if you have some quick hot takes on, just the connections that you make. How do you continue to make connections for art? Like an artist that wants to be in your shoes, that wants to do video work for somebody, right? Or wants to meet some people. Like how do you get yourself out there?
I always go back to kind of the beginning, which was, I worked with a kid who happened to be a Muay Thai fighter, and I asked to do a video for free, and I
Mm,
spent a few weeks going to the gym after work with him periodically, and then went to his fight, and then I edited this video for free that took a month, and that was really solid, and then I decided to expand my work to literally anything.
mm-hmm.
Because when you're starting out, like so much of it is building a portfolio. It's always good not to put yourself in a box unless like that
Yeah.
box is general videography. I mean, really, because it's hard to get gigs that you want to do, especially when they're in industries that are very competitive, and you're just starting out. Like, not to mention, my photography portfolio was all sorts of things, but some of it was just like the way I took a photo of the flower outside, and it's like being creative with that because people will see like, oh, that's cool, even if it's not like Miley Cyrus, like it's a flower, but it is something that can show your creative eye or
Mm-hmm.
direction. As
Mm-hmm.
far as networking itself, putting yourself out there, reaching out to um, anyone that that might know someone, and it doesn't have to be knowing someone. It's like I said, my friend was an intern at an agency. It can be like people who are connected to someone in the creative world, or
Yeah.
posting on Craigslist that you're a videographer and you'll work for cheap or free. I mean, people need those. I still look at gigs all the time on Craigslist and you see the kind of things that people are posting. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like sometimes you don't want to do that. And sometimes it's like maybe I make the most of that.
Yeah.
But just being open, like one of the things that really worked for me with RCA was that I said yes to every gig that they sent me. And RCA has some cool gigs. Some were a little bit like taking photos of the label team with an artist who's like a nobody, and it takes an hour of my time, but like doesn't pay that great. And it's like executives, and they're like, yeah, but like that shows that you're willing, and they will
Sure.
continue to reach out to you.
Yeah.
Saying yes to any and everything is the way I would start.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting key point that you made there that I want to highlight is the fact that you make connections with the people that you're surrounded by, and I think that a really important lesson that I personally learned later that I wish I learned earlier is like so often as we're trying to start a career, we're trying to like constantly reach up to these people. And like, you didn't try to, get a gig with Ed Sheeran, you started with an intern that you met at college, at RCA. And then you start to slowly build up your network, like, and I think that something I wish I learned, is that I wish I became friends with other content creators that had at the time 1,000 subscribers, just like me at the time, rather than waiting until I had all these. Like I was so lonely for so long. Like I wish that I had people the journey because I think that so many, including myself at the time, was like, oh, I want to be friends with the when I had 1,000 subscribers, people that have 500,000. But there's a totally different dynamic. There's so many things that you have to learn before you get to that level. You're on a different playing field. But as you grow, that you meet all these people, and it's I think it's important to network with the people that you're surrounded by. That's definitely a
Yeah,
great.
you
Same
got
thing
to
with the,
grow.
your.
I
Sorry,
was
was
gonna
just
say, you got to grow out before you grow up. You got to build those roots before you grow the tree.
this true, man. It's true.
Nice little metaphor
Yeah, I live. Yeah, absolutely. So there are a ton of Pentaholics that follow this channel actually, and they are I want to give them a shout out because they are the ones that put me in contact. Gave your name. I saw your name on the director's list of or the, I guess was it director or videographer? Like what on the Pentatonix evergreen behind the scenes. Uh,
Mm.
what was your title on that? I apologize if I got it wrong.
Well, I did everything, but I directed the piece.
Okay, yeah,
And I said director because it was a real like mini doc. It's
yeah,
not
sure.
just like a little behind the scenes or on tour of like a cool video. I mean, it was really like a mini doc. So definitely directed the piece as
Yeah,
well as
okay.
shot.
So when it came
Yeah.
up, I put I screenshot. I was like, I gotta reach out to this guy because it was phenomenal, and I love this stuff. I love watching that stuff. It's just it's so cool to every aspect of it. And you captured some really great moments in it. So I want to compliment
Yeah.
that. Can you talk a little bit on that process and how you decided what to keep and what not to keep and which songs to put in and all that aspect? Because there must
Yeah.
have
I
been a
mean,
lot of footage too, right?
there's a lot of footage. Yeah. What was interesting about that was that Pentatonix management hit me up and said, "Hey, we're recording this album and we're doing it a little differently than we normally do. And so we would love to get you in the studio for a few of the days." I mean, they did like 2 weeks of recording, and I was going to be in there for like 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
In hindsight, like we didn't even, no one really knew what the scope of the project would be. It was kind of like just get in there and let's make something. And, I had said, if I'm going to do this, I kind of want to do it in a different way. I don't want to do it like a behind the scenes where, Kirsty or Scott look at the camera and go, "So today we're in the studio." It's like, it feels more highbrow to be recording their process and not just have these like fun interviews that we do all the time, which they loved. So I brought 3 cameras into the studio. I'm the only person operating. Set 2 of them up on a tripod and 1 of them up on my Ronin. And I got a lot of footage. It's a lot of footage between them recording, between them talking about things, the arranging process, all the things that you kind of see in there. Well, because once you had all this footage, you realize like, wow, dude, like, what am I doing? What am I going to make? Really? Obviously, the most interesting thing was what's different about this process for them than normally.
Sure.
So taking all the parts of them talking, of them rehearsing, and like they don't usually sing every song and go over it together like they did around the piano. So that was already really compelling, on top of them just harmonizing, which is just beautiful, and people want to see that, including myself. So so basically it was like breaking it down by song, by moments within those songs that are unique, that are special to the new process. There's a lot of stuff we cut. A lot of it is kind of similar. So that, making those choices, like what's the most powerful moment? Like, for example, when they're standing around the piano, I forgot exactly what song it was, but they go over it multiple times. There wasn't just the one time. I can't really show it multiple times when it's similar. They're in the same position, so finding what was most powerful, the most conversation. If they're talking about a note, that is it like or whatever, like let's get that in there, because you don't see that when you're in the studio normally. I've been in the studio with them where they go in and it's business, and they go in kind of solo and they hit some notes and they talk a little bit with Ben Bram. But they're pros and they know what they're doing. They're prepped ahead of time. So this was really cool, and a lot of footage, a lot of editing, but I felt like it was a piece that I was proud to say, like, I directed,
Yeah, absolutely. Are you ever, in the process of filming these, are you ever like, hey guys, could you do this? Or is it all just like a fly on the wall kind of?
This was strictly fly on the wall. Because I didn't want to interrupt their process. And also it's such an intimate moment for like the 5 of them to be there, and working together, collaborating, especially when they don't normally do things as the way they are. So I just didn't want to interrupt it, almost like you're in the wild, and you don't want to interrupt the nature that's happening, the way they're moving around. But when I do behind the scenes stuff, I will sometimes shape the video a little bit more, whether it's talking about like what I want them to kind of say with the interview, or, hey, can you do that again? Let me make sure I got this right. Or, why don't you come over here and tell me something, or get in a little bit closer. this was strictly like whatever's, I was the fly on the wall, which definitely made it a little more challenging, but that's why I brought 3 cameras and would get there and prep the cameras and stuff so that I kind of let 2 of them roll and I was operating the 3rd one.
Hours and hours of footage. It'd be kind of cool though to see, like, you have this almost highlight reel of I think it's 17 minutes the video or something like that, of the best footage. But it'd be interesting for like the diehard fans, I think, if they released like a 2-hour version, you know, where it maybe is a little bit more monotonous because you have, you know, 30 seconds of them practicing instead of 4 seconds. But it'd be an interesting little, you know, actual documentary for the people, because you know, there's all levels of the fandom.
I think it would have been for that kind of documentary if I had been in the studio more and had other songs and more content, because it really was like kind of repetitive. Some of them are like, you know, not very good takes that the band wouldn't really want shown. You know, and on top of that, it's just it's 17 minutes long. There probably isn't too much more that would be worthwhile. Even rolling, it'd be like, okay, this is like the same take of something just a little bit less interesting.
Oh yeah.
So if in hindsight, I wish I could have been in there the whole time, because, you know, there's some songs like even with The Prayer, which, you know, is like their biggest one, where they were doing pieces here and there and they're listening to it, which is really cool. But I wasn't even told to come into the studio for the beginning part when they're recording it, you know, and that would have been really cool. Like the 2-hour, or even like that Beatles documentary that came out, where you're like listening.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
The whole process. Yeah, no, the content that's missing is not as interesting as the Beatles stuff for sure.
Hey, you never know. Something might be, but that's cool, man. I want to be respectful of your time, so I want to wrap it up in a minute or two. But I'm curious. Hot take: 3 pieces of gear that you think every videographer should have.
Okay. Well,
or 3 pieces of gear that you don't like, that most people wouldn't think about. Like obviously, like a light, that's important, you know. But like that
camera would be a good start.
Yeah, no, that most people would not think. Like, oh, like you've been doing video for, at this point, you know, you graduated in 2014 college, right? So like 8 years at this point. In your journey of doing all these videos, hours and hours of filming, you're like, wow, I learned after 6 years of doing this, I need that, but I would have never thought to do that kind of thing.
Well, I don't know about never thought, but definitely the stabilizer I just got. Shout out DJI Ronin. The RSC2 or SC2 is, I just got it for this most recent tour. I've always been working with this handheld Ronin, which I really like, but their new one is just a beast. It's really beautiful. It works really well, especially with the focus meter or the focus rig, where you can just use your finger and you're pulling the focus on the camera. And going off of that, I would say a really good lens, like a versatile zoom lens for a videographer. You know, you hear about prime lenses all the time, which are really good, but they're really like film lenses or things that, you know, it's all like on the fly. I need to get all of them in the shot, but then I want to get that close up of Kevin beatboxing or talking or whatever, to be able to have a really good zoom lens that's got pretty like an f2.8. It's expensive, but that kind of lens is really beneficial.
So you choose an f2.8 zoom lens over like an 1.4 prime
for videography? Yeah. Now, if you can get a 1.4 zoom lens, it's like,
$17,000 later.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, really, and the reason is because if I'm standing here and I've got a wide shot, and then, you know, you can immediately get into a 50 millimeter, you know, and that's like what your eyes see. And then I can get a zoom lens. I mean, for a lot of the time I was working with a 24-105 on my Canon, the Canon L Prime series or whatever. And it was an f4 though. And you're like losing some light. And when you lose that light and that depth of field, it's a little bit crisper, especially now when the cameras are so good. So as you're doing videography, I would definitely say a zoom lens more so than a prime. A third piece of equipment, I mean, getting a drone you can operate is really great, just because like the establishing shots of a drone are unbeatable in my opinion. You can always get a wide shot of a building, but to get the whole landscape, it just brings the quality up pretty significantly.
And to piggyback on that, they are getting incredibly inexpensive. Dude, I remember, and like for good quality, like, you know, I remember when like the DJI stuff was like, you know, you're dropping $1,500 for like a decent one, you know, and
Hmm.
if you wanted anything good, it'd be like 4 or 5 grand. Now you can get like an actual pretty good one for like a couple $100. Like, yeah, you're not gonna put it on like, you know, MGM Studios, but like for somebody that has no idea that this is, you know, you spent $300 on this drone, people are like, oh, that's a cool photo, especially if it's a 4 second clip, you know.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. I know I mean, I have the Mavic Air, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like $400 or something,
Mm-hmm.
and it's maybe not amazing in high winds, but okay, whatever. Like it shoots in 4K, it shoots in slow mo, and it's easily operable. I mean, it's definitely worth the investment. And
Oh
learning how
yeah.
to fly is cool and really fun. Like
a
you
hundred
look down at
percent.
what you're doing, and you're like, this is so cool. I can't believe I can just do this in my hands right now.
And there's so much less stress when you're operating a $400 item as opposed to a $4,000 item. I was stressed flying that thing with when it was like 300 or 400 bucks, but I couldn't fathom it being, you know, $4,000 crashing into a tree kind of thing. So,
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do it. I've crashed a drone into a tree that then dropped into a stream. I've lost one into a cornfield that took 45 minutes to find. Like,
oh,
I'm not doing that with a 45, like $100 drone. No way. No.
I love that, man. Last question I'd like to wrap everybody up is what is something that you know now in your career that you wish you knew starting off?
Hmm. It's gonna take a while, and you have to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
That is so true.
didn't everyone would be doing it, but it takes a while to get where you want to be doing. I mean, even with when I got Pentatonix 5 years or so out of college, like I still didn't get a lot of other videography work, and I'm not even trying to be a videographer. I had a documentary that won an award. I had a feature film that won an award, a short film that's won awards in small festivals, and no one's hitting me up to do directing work right now. It's about like building. I mean, I directed The Sound of Silence, which has 117 million views for Pentatonix, and no one is like, sweet man, hitting you up. Like, it's all about pushing yourself when you feel like you want to kind of give up. Things will happen. It's about growth, but just being patient. And I still struggle with that, especially sometimes when I see other work. And I'm like, how did they do that? I'm
Mm.
like, but it's just
The
staying
comparison
patient.
game in the arts is hard to
Hmm.
not get caught up in that 100%.
Yeah. And I mean, we're surrounded by that with social media. It's like what
Yes.
everyone else is doing, whether they really
Yeah.
are or they're flexing. I mean, it's just staying on your path,
Hmm.
staying patient, trusting that life is a really long game and it's all about the long goal.
Couldn't agree more. I love that, especially with the aspect of. I want to just really comment quickly on you said like 117 million or 120 million for The Sound of Silence. It's like I understand what you're saying in the sense of like you have all these moments and like you expect like, oh, you know, if I did that then everybody hits off, but which is so true. It's so frustrating, but a perspective that I try to keep, you know, and saying this for all the people that watch this after the fact is like those key moments are just I try to use as proof that like, hey, I'm on the right path. Like it's almost like this. Okay, if I can do this, I can do that. You know, like one, it's another thing. Okay, I'm actually on the right path. Because for a while, it's like nothing was working out, and you're like, am I doing what? Like, am I crazy? You know what I mean? And now it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, 117 million on on this. You know, touring the world with Pentaton. Oh, okay, I am. It's just gonna take a lot more of these check marks to finally get where.
I mean, it's like going upstairs in a way because you're just like every year I've been proud to say that each year that I've been out of college, I've been doing something a little bit better or a little bit,
Absolutely.
closer to where I want to go. If you take some time to think about all the things that you've done or where you started or what you were doing or how you were living, there's reasons to be proud. And if you feel like at some point you're
Yes.
going out, then you got to find a way to just take a step, even if it's just smaller, a little bit a better project, something you're passionate about, and moving up the ladder each year. I mean, it's a good way to keep yourself going,
A
really.
100%. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time. I want to take the 2 seconds and thank every single person that watched this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys felt inspired by something to keep going on your creative journey. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Oh, by the way, all your social media aspects and your website and everything will be in the description below.
Cool.
So go check out his stuff. Best way to support my channel is checking out my music. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a wonderful rest of your day. God bless and peace out.